Hey Yo-Yo Sisterhood, thanks for being here with me on Patreon. This is going to be our second video with the Yo-Yo flower quilt, and today we're going to talk about how to make those yo-yos, whether you want to make them by hand or with a Clover template. And then I'll talk about how I prepared my fabric and how I've decided I'm going to lay out the yo-yo flowers. It wasn't an easy decision. I kind of, well, maybe it was, maybe it was after I thought about it. But anyway, I just want to welcome you and thank you for being here. And I hope that you're going to either make some yo-yos or incorporate them into a quilt. And if you have any questions, please comment and ask. That is what we're here for. We're doing this together, or you could just be watching me, which is fine. But we're gonna sit down and make some yo-yos, one of each kind, totally handmade, the way my grandma taught me, and then one with a Clover template, and you decide which one you like better. These that I purchased off of eBay were all handmade. Some of them were already made into flowers. Some are kind of recapping. And then I had a basket full of extras that I started stitching into flowers. Some of them are still a little bit loose, which I can show you. When we get to that part, I'll show you. But let's head over to the little cutting table I have set up over there, and we will start making some yo-yos. Okay, so here we are at the cutting table. As you can see, Bring More Flowers is behind me off the wall right now. I'll be stitching on that later today. And then I have the flower yo-yo quilt up here. I have my glasses off because there's so much glare. I actually, my sewing studio is very small. I like to have these doors open so that you can see into my other room, or I have all that, you know, more air circulating, but it seemed like there was a really bad glare. So I just closed that off for now for us. So pardon me while I put my glasses back on so I can see what I'm doing. I know there's going to be glare. I've done every which way and I can't get it figured out, but you don't care about that. We're making yo-yos. So let me bring you down. And if you've been with me on YouTube, we have done this before, but if you haven't been, we're going to do it again. So these are the handmade yo-yos. You can see when they're handmade, the center area turns out to be a little bit bigger. When you use a Clover template, and I cinch mine really tight, that ends up to be closed up really nice and tight. I prefer these, but since these are the way that I bought them on eBay, I'm really motivated. You can see how I started sewing them into flowers, but I didn't get them all done, and then I wanted to show you how I did that. So let's start out with the yo-yos. I might go through this really quickly just in case we all know how to do them. I do want to tell you that I do have a cute needle book that a friend of mine, Sarah, made me all the way from, look how she put the old vintage yo-yos on there, that she made me from England. She lives in England. And I have extra needles here. And then I have my needles sorted by blunt, big eyes, sharp, smaller eyes, really big, dangerous needles. And then some of my favorites that I use just for regular stitching. So let me see if I already had. I did happen to already thread a needle, and I already did this for you guys and my camera fell, so I already have a knot in there, but that's not going to be big enough if I cut it again. You know what, we have to do 2 yo-yos, so I'll show you how I made that knot in the next one. So we started out that I just found a canister in my house that I traced that ended up being 4 3/4, and then the template should end up being 2 3/4, which should be the same size as these. I'm not making any more to put on the quilt. I just wanted a guideline in case you guys do want to make one that's similar size, that you would have something to go by. So We will do the hand one first, but I do want to show you and tell you that if you want a copy of this with the exact size, if you email me at blackthreadstudio@yahoo, and in the subject line, if you're coming from Patreon, just always put either Patreon or Yo-Yo Sisterhood in the subject line, and I will open it right away and look and see what you guys are asking for. And then I can send this to you and you can just print it out. That easy. What I noticed today, unbelievably, when I got this out, I was like, well, is that going to be about the same size? I laid this down and oh my gosh, it is exactly the same size. So how amazing is that? So what I'm going to try to do, because I didn't want to cut up my master copy here, I'm going to show you guys. You can either, when you get your template, you can use the clear Mylar. I wanted to grab some for you, but I am totally out. Or a cardstock. Or if you're just going to use the template that I sent you, I would probably make a couple copies. But you can see, I just used that Clover template. And what I'm going to do is just like, as in, these are more paper scissors than fabric. I have some that I'll use with fabric and paper that are pretty dull. This is it. They might be getting too dull to even cut through the fabric, but we'll see. So I'm kind of just making a little pattern, and I did leave an edge on there because I think it's easier to cut out. This is, I love this shirt. This was from Goodwill. I love the fabric. And I've been cutting yo-yos and hexies out of this and using this on Bring More Flowers. So I will probably use these yo-yos that I'm showing you now. I will probably end up using those on Bring More Flowers. So just like I would if I was, you know, in my sewing class in high school or middle school, where I learned to sew garments, which I'm terrible at. I don't enjoy that at all, but my older sister Debbie does. She used to be really, really like unbelievable seamstress and make really tailored, beautiful clothes. Not me. I never did do that. Okay, let's see how dull these are. I'm just going to cut this out a little bit so I don't have all of that. And this will probably be easier for me unless I pin it more. I'm just going to leave it down and cut around it. And you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. And nothing I ever do has to be perfect, nor do I want it to be perfect, because that is so stressful for me that it takes all the fun out. So I, years ago, gave myself the freedom to say it doesn't have to be perfect. So I hope that if that pertains to you, you can do the same thing. So I've got that cut out. Now, when you go to stitch this down, it is really going to depend on how wide you make your little seam that you flip over, how big that your yo-yo is going to turn out. Okay, so if that was yours, what I would do is put I have to learn how to not put pins in my mouth, 4 3/4 inch template. Let's just put template. 2 3/4 inch yo-yo finished. And I would stick that someplace where you can keep it. I have a big board over there where I just have all kinds of paper things like this stuck. I need to get them organized into a file. Okay. So you want your right fabric, side of the fabric down. And it's just so, some people say it's like a little shower cap. You're just going to fold that edge over. I think I'm going to rearrange you to see. I'm kind of putting my arms around. You know what, I can't see at all what I'm showing you guys, so that's not gonna work. We'll do it this way, okay? So you don't want the knot on the outside, so I'm not gonna start on the outside. I don't wanna see that. I'm gonna start on the inside. So my knot is there. And what I'm gonna do, I just got that started a little bit in a funny way for you, but as you stitch, just do kind of a running stitch all the way around. Just poking and coming back up. Poke down, come back up. And as you go, just roll your edge over. Poke down, come back up. And if you get a rhythm going, you can just keep going all the way around. That is too hard for me to do, so I'm going to bring you guys this way. And we'll be able to get through it a little bit quicker. So I know you're upside down. If you've been watching me on YouTube, then you're used to, I guess, how I do things and how it's easier for me. So again, I like to use a double thread because if I'm going to all this trouble to stitch these, I just want to make sure it's nice and tight, so that when I gather it at the end and I'm pulling, that nothing breaks. I have done some with a single thread and I haven't had any trouble at all. So you can see I'm just folding over as I go. It depends too on how close to the edge you stitch. I'm kind of going, oh, maybe about 1/3 of the way down from where I'm rolling it. Not quite halfway, just kind of along the top. Now this, I told you this was a 4 3/4. When we get to the Clover template, it's a 60 millimeter is the size, and it is the yellow. So when we get done with this, we'll look at the finishes and see which one we like better. I wish you guys could talk to me and let me know if you can see this okay, or I guess if I'm gonna get, excuse me, serious about doing this, am I gonna have to figure out another camera? I don't know. I'm not gonna think about that yet. My problem is I just want to sit and stitch and share it with you guys. I don't want to do all the technical stuff. I don't even want to know how to do it. I just want it to magically appear. Now, if you're wondering, I can tell you I'm not in the flow. I mean, you can get into a flow with these, but I'm not in a flow. I guess because I'm not that excited about, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm excited to see how this turns out, if it's going to be the same size as the other ones. So this will be a good test if you know, care if you're going to make some. If they're the same size that I had gotten off eBay. I really don't care because these aren't going on the same quilt. Now, I always end right where I started, where that knot, or I'll even go 1 stitch past. That just pulls in that little space of that gather. So you can see I started gathering that as I went. We'll just pull it all the way tight. Oh, you know what? These are going to end up smaller than mine, but that's okay. They are still going to make a really, I shouldn't say mine, the yo-yos I got off eBay. So I'm just finagling with it a little bit. That actually did come out a little bit tighter than I thought it was going to. Now, if you are going to use your yo-yos where you're going to see the back, I don't do this. If, and almost always, I'm stitching my yo-yos onto something to secure that, I leave the thread, because as in these that I showed you, I don't like when they cut them off and you can see that thread underneath. And if that's tight enough and you can't see where the opening is, I actually got that one pretty good. I pull it all the way through, and then what I do is I just kind of do a couple little slip knots and knot that off on itself. So 1, 2 times I came through that circle, and I'll just pull that. Okay, let's compare. That one actually turned out pretty good, but in comparison, it is, you know, not that much smaller. Not that much smaller. So that's a cute little yo-yo, don't you guys think? Okay, let's do one with the yo-yo, the Clover maker. Now this one, I'm going to, this is the right side of the fabric. I'm going to flip it so that when I come with the yo-yo maker, it's going to come from underneath. I am going to have to do some more thread. So let me just, I'm going to use that little yo-yo as my little pin cushion right now. Normally, I mean, you can do a couple yo-yos out of a length. I usually do like my arm's length and then double that up. We'll get that threaded. And let's do that. It's going to be a double. Pinch it, wrap it. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. I get a feeling for it. And then pull that. I'm pinching and pulling that knot. Came all the way down to the end. And I will clip off my little tails there. Okay, now get my little pin cushion ready here. I think if I put you back up here, I had you elevate a little bit, I could actually see a little bit better as to whether or not I was had you lined up. By the way, I love to do this. Do you have a cute little pin cushion? As I'm getting these done, I love to just stick them in there and kind of look at them. It's satisfying. Okay, so my fabric is face down, the right side face down. This pops out just like that. You have these notches on here where these lines on here, when you set it in there, it's going to line up with that notch. So I'm going to set this underneath. I'm going to peek and get one of my notches where it's set. I want to make sure I have enough fabric that's going to go all the way around the edges, so like especially here. And I'm going to take that line and line it up. If it's not lined up, it won't snap in real nice. So let's hear if we can hear it snap. Okay, so it's in there. Now you can do this another way where you cut out a square or a circle first. I like to put this in and then just cut around the edges. So I'm leaving just a little bit above where the edge is. That way I know exactly. And I think it saves fabric. If you're doing a lot of these, then you can line it back up, you know, closer to this circle edge, instead of having a big square piece that you just cut off. Okay, I just kind of chopped that edge, so I'm going to clean that up. And again, these were the bad scissors, but that worked just fine. Now when I do this, I went and took, on these there will be, it will say the millimeters, and then it says Clover down here. on all these, I went, this is wearing down. We'll see if you can see it if I do it this way. If I had a bigger marker. Anyway, I kind of went over it so I could see as a starting point. Okay, so I think you don't have to hold it the way I am. This is just the way it's comfortable for me. But again, you want to come up from the bottom so that that knot is going to be on the inside edge of the fabric. So as you're going, I'm making sure, and I'm holding with my thumb and making sure all these edges are getting held down so that they get caught. You have these little smileys. You're coming up in one of the smileys this way, coming up, and then going down. And when I'm going down, I'm making sure that that edge of the fabric is getting caught and that needle's right there. Okay? That's why I'm going around and holding it down with my thumb to make sure that little edge gets stuck. So I marked that, so I knew that that's my starting point, because sometimes it's hard to see where you started and where you're going to stop. So I'm just going to go all the way around, up and down in the smileys. And I can tell you this is how I taught Reed and Hadley, doing the smileys. And I think Reed was 3 or 4, maybe 3 when he did his first one. And he just was on it with the smiley and holding it down. So again, I have my double thread. Up and down. I have a feeling, I don't know what the difference is in that first one that I did, unless it was the way I stitched it down. It does have to do with how much you fold over the edge. But mine, when I do them by hand, usually don't come out as tight as that one did. So I'm kind of pleased with that one because I like when it's tighter. We are at the halfway point. My thread is getting shorter, which will happen. Oh, goodness gracious, where am I at? There we go. That's why you want to make sure that your thread is extra long so you don't start running out. And if you have a really long needle, it's going to be harder as your thread gets shorter for your needle to reach. So I wouldn't use a really long needle. I would stick to kind of just a regular or even a shorter needle. I have used like the little quilters betweens. Okay, we are coming all the way around. And when I come to the end, I'm going to show you, I might be short anyway, and then I can show you what I do. So my thread is going to be too short, I think, on the very end. So I have this one. Look how short that's getting to pull through. And I have, this is the last one in the circle. But again, I like to go back down into the one I started so it just closes up really nice. Okay, I made it there, and I made it there. Look, it's too short. I'm not going to make it. It doesn't matter how short you are, you can do this. I'm going to pop that off. I just popped it right out. Just take your edges off. And the last few stitches, you can just finish up by hand. So I just want to take one more where I'm coming in and then past where my knot was, so that that closes up really nice and tight. Pull another little shower cap and just kind of tucking in those ends and pulling that. And then you just kind of start to kind of play with it. That center is a lot tighter. I'll show you in just a second here. I will tie that off and then we'll look at them together. So I'm going to stick that underneath. Now I can leave it like that. And again, I don't know why, but I pull mine really tight. I really don't know why I like that. And I'll just tie it off on each other a couple times, loop-de-loo. If you're not sure, can do it again. Now, if I am going to stitch these down right away, I don't cut these off. I will lay it onto, I would lay it onto my fabric, just like that. Do a couple pins. Sometimes I use a little bit of glue. And I would just start stitching that down all the way around the edges. And I've already have that string there, or that thread. Okay, let's compare. That is the Clover template, or yeah, the Clover template yo-yo. That is the hand one. You can see a little bit of difference in the centers. Okay, well, you decide if you want to make yo-yos, if you're gonna do this. I make yo-yos when I'm bored and I just fill them in a jar, and then I'll just send them to my grandkids, or I'll have a whole bunch to use on a project, like Bring More Flowers that I'm working on over on YouTube. So, okay, I'm gonna rearrange you. We're gonna go over to the design wall, and I'll let you know how I decided we're gonna do this. Okay, so here we are on the design wall. By the way, do you guys want to know what I'm using for the design wall? This is a sheet that you can, I've had it for a long time, but it's by Fons and Porter, and then it has the little grommets up on top. And Jim ended up putting this, he didn't want a whole lot of holes here. He had put up a wall for me in the basement where I could stick things, but I don't go down there. The lighting's not good, and who wants to go in a basement to use a design wall? So that's actually kind of like a chair rail up high where he left it. So what is it, like those are picture hangers. What am I trying to say? You know, like they did in the old Victorian days, and they hung pictures. So I have like my clock is hung with that. So anyway, there is a grid on here which helps me when I'm trying to line it up, and it is kind of like a batting feel. Now my problem is, because I can't stick things into the wall, I'm just pinning it to this. Like, you know, I left it a little bit loose, so I could just pin it to that. Some of these are heavy enough that they don't just stick to it, but you know, right now it's working for me. So okay, so that's what I use for the design wall. I am trying to organize and keep track, so this is the book I'm using for Patreon. This is going to be the Flower Yo Yo Quilt. So I've got all the specs written down. This is going to help me keep organized. And then if you guys have any questions or you want to do it too. Okay, so this is what we're moving on to. I told you last time I didn't really know what the fabric content was, because it was upholstery weight that I had gotten from Joanne. I didn't go find out what it was, but I thought before I do this, I should really probably wash it just to make sure it's going to wash up okay to use as a, you know, as a quilt. So I did. I washed this and I washed this together. because I want to make sure that once they're quilted together, they're going to work really nicely together. They came out beautifully. They're both really nice and soft. Again, I think this is some kind of linen, this is some kind of cotton. And then after I did that, I thought, you know what? I really should wash the batting as well, so that all of it is washed and already shrunk before I put it all together. I usually don't wash my fabrics and everything before I make a quilt. I like to put it together and then wash it and then have it get that, you know, like the old-fashioned look right away when it's washed after it's put together. But this time, this was the first for me, and I might do it again. Who knows? Anyway, my idea was, because, again, if I can show you, this already has kind of a diamond grid on it. So I don't want to interfere with whatever I'm going to quilt to interfere with the way this is going to look on the back. So I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. I thought, should I just hand tie it? I mean, this is something I just want to do to get it done. I'm probably going to use this as an example in my yo-yo lecture, the Yo-Yo Sisterhood lecture that I do, which I have 2 booked for the fall, so I'm excited about that. But I thought I'll probably use this, but I'm also going to use it at home. It's going to get used. So I didn't know if I was going to hand tie it or actually quilt it. I'll do hand, just like big hand quilting. It's not going to be anything fancy. So in keeping in mind the grid on the back, I thought, don't think about that too much because I'm making it way too hard on myself. So then I was thinking, should I do these in a grid pattern and then stitch, you know, just stitch them into like little boxes, grid pattern, and that would be the quilting. And then what am I going to do with these? I thought, well, as long as I have to stitch these on, should I use a big like pearl cotton and actually see the stitches? So let me back up. So my choice was, should I do like little teeny slip stitches, you know, where these are just going to be stitched on and it's going to be hidden, or am I going to use big chunky stitches, have you see the stitching, and then it's going to show up as a flower pattern on the back? So that's kind of where I started going with it. I'm just going to do it so that it's a flower. I'm going to stitch right through these. I'm going to kind of tack glue them on in place, and then you'll see like a flower pattern in the back. I'm not crazy about doing the grid. Number one, because I don't want to have to measure. That seems like it's going to hurt my head. I do like the way this looks if I was going to go in a grid pattern. But then I thought, what if we just really mess it up? So I'm going to do that with you guys, and we're going to see if that's going to work. The other thing is, you know, these aren't really the colors that I would pick or choose. I mean, some of them are. This really isn't my color. Anyway, but I'm going to use them, and I want to use them all. Now, I know I need to leave a couple inch border on each side all the way around. And again, I'm doing that pinstripe. This, I just had a little piece of it because I wanted to see if I was going to like it. I will have to order more of this, and then I will wash that as well, so that everything that I used on this quilt I know would have been washed. I'm thinking, I mean, that looks cute, but I'm going to lose some of the striping, I think. I will probably cut the strips so that the stripes are going this way. So I actually get like that stripy, you know, it will be like that wide. How wide? That wide? Okay. So what if we take these and just do random flowers and put them up there. Now I have it written down. I forgot how many I have. I'm just going to move these around a little bit. I don't really care if they're all about the same width apart. I'm just going to pay attention so that I don't have the same colors next to each other. So that there's going to be a nice, see, like I wouldn't put this one next to this one. And that one's going to be pretty close to that one. What do you think about that? If I just keep going, I might have to put these closer together because I have quite a few left that I have to work into place on here. And I did leave some that weren't stitched all the way so that I could show you what I did. So it takes 7 of these, 1 for the center and then 6 for the petals all the way around. What I did is I just lined them up, kind of laid them out, and then what I would do is I took, trying to get this so you can see it, as usual, as per my usual. So, pardon my dirty ironing board cover, but what I did is I laid them out, and then what I would do is lay this over, kind of pinch it, do a little slip stitch. Then what I did is I did the opposite one so that I kind of had good spacing. And then I just picked up these, set them in, just pinched it after I laid it out, laid it back out, pinched it, just did a slip stitch in the same color. And now I will start stitching these together on the side. So that's pretty easy. It went pretty quick. Don't worry about, I was doing really heavy duty stitching in here when I first started, and a lot heavier than what the previous stitcher was doing. And then I thought, I don't need that because I'm going to be stitching all this down if I do the quilting style that way. And I also want to tell you that these are pretty forgiving. I mean, they're gathered, you know, they're puffy. So as you're stitching them together, you know, you can just, even after you get them stitched, just make sure that they're laying flat. What do you think about that? If I just keep going, I might have to put these closer together because I have quite a few left that I have to work into place on here. And I did leave some that weren't stitched all the way so that I could show you what I did. So it takes 7 of these, 1 for the center and then 6 for the petals all the way around. What I did is I just lined them up, kind of laid them out, and then what I would do is I took, trying to get this so you can see it, as usual, as per my usual. So, pardon my dirty ironing board cover. But what I did is I laid them out, and then what I would do is lay this over, kind of pinch it, do a little slip stitch. Then what I did is I did the opposite one so that I kind of had good spacing. And then I just picked up these, set them in, just pinched it after I laid it out, laid it back out, pinched it, just did a slip stitch in the same color. And now I will start stitching these together on the side. So that's pretty easy. It went pretty quick. Don't worry about, I was doing really heavy duty stitching in here when I first started, and a lot heavier than what the previous stitcher was doing. And then I thought, I don't need that because I'm going to be stitching all this down if I do the quilting style that way. And I also want to tell you that these are pretty forgiving. I mean, they're gathered, you know, they're puffy. So as you're stitching them together, you know, you can just, even after you get them stitched, just make sure that they're laying flat. So until I see you next time, I'm going to get all these laid out. As I'm looking at it more, I think they're going to end up, because I have so many, they are going to end up being this close together, which is fine because then they'll have some really nice floral quilting that you'll see from the back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue pinning them up. Once they're pinned, I'm going to use my Unique Stitch glue that I talk about all the time to show you guys. I'll use my Unique Stitch glue, and what I'll do is as they're in place, I'm just going to come and I'll just tuck underneath and put little dots. Just a little dot like that will hold it. That way I won't need any of the pins, and then I can just take it and carry it. And what I will do then, well, let me back up. That isn't true. I won't just take it and carry it. I will get these glued down, and then before I actually start stitching them, I'm going to have to sandwich it with the batting and the backing. That is what we'll be doing next. And then we'll start quilting it all together. So stitching these down will be one motion and will end up being the quilting. So, I mean, the longest, I think that will take a while, but I think it's going to take me just the rest of the afternoon to figure out a layout on these. So once I do, I'm going to work on a little bit, then I'll show you, and I'll start gluing them down. And then until next week, when we will start sandwiching and quilting already. Can you believe that? Just heads up, I think I'm going to use an Aurifil weight 12, but I haven't decided on what color. So stay tuned for that. You guys have a beautiful, beautiful day, and I will see you soon. And thank you so much for being here in the Yo-Yo Sisterhood.